Hey, I'm Jermaine,
And I'm Renee.
and we're the Macks. So today we're just gonna talk about sharing our journey of infertility. Something that we don't really hear talked about a lot.
Mhm.
We've said on this channel before that usually you hear the stories after, and you don't hear the
Yeah,
stories during. So
Yeah.
we're sharing ours during. This actually happens to coincide with National Infertility Awareness Week.
Yes.
So, when we talked about it, we're like, let's just kind of share some of our experiences during the last 9 years of us waiting for children.
Yeah.
So
9+ years. So specifically today we're talking about just the impact on our marriage.
yeah.
How this infertility journey has impacted us individually and as a couple.
Yeah.
So
All right. So
yeah,
we're
stick
just gonna
around.
go with the intro real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So where do you
Where
want to
do we
start?
begin?
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's start at the beginning of this journey, right? So initially I was more ready, I would say, for children, and I was gung ho about it. So we had both agreed that we wanted to try for children. At the time it was about 2012.
Yeah.
It was about 2012, and we were trying, and while we were trying, I started feeling very sharp pains in my abdomen, and like the jarring pains that would stop me in my tracks, and I would have to just pause and wait for it to pass, or I'd
Yeah.
stop and sit on the bed and be like, just closing my eyes and hoping for it to go
I
away.
remember those days all too well.
Yeah. And as usual, Jermaine was the one to say, babe, don't you think you should get that checked out?
I still have to do that to this day. To this day, I still have to do that.
Oh, yeah, that is true. So, when we went to get it checked out, I learned that I had a large fibroid as well.
Size of a football, like
It
no,
was
it
it was
like this.
it was pretty big.
I think doctor said it was like
A
4 to
4 month
5 month
pregnancy.
pregnancy.
Pregnancy, right? So
We don't have photos, thankfully.
we do, but we just won't share them. It's a little traumatic.
It's like a football, like one of those
With a
that
very
is
big
in
vein.
American football.
Very big vein
Yeah.
in it. Yeah. Sorry about that graphic. But yeah, so we went. I went to get checked, and that's what was found: a fibroid as well as a cyst. So apparently the cyst was hemorrhaging, and that's what was causing the pain. So, went through the regular things. So by January, February of 2013, I had to have surgery to remove the fibroid. Once that was done,
And the doctor was like, wait 6 months
and then start
then
trying
start
again.
So we're like, okay, so in our minds, we're like, well, the fibroid must have been what was causing us to not be able to have children. So we're like, okay, cool. We've been trying for, I think, a year or two at the time.
Yeah.
And we're like,
A year.
okay, fibroid is the issue. We're good. Nothing to worry about. Fibroid is actually very common among, I think, Caribbean women.
Caribbean woman, yeah.
So we're like, okay, cool, standard stuff. We'll be fine.
Mhm.
So later on that year, we started trying. After 6 months, I made sure it was not sooner. And then we were just trying. So going into 2014, we're like, well, we're trying for a couple of months. Nothing is happening. I'm like, well, something's a little strange.
Yeah. So before we get into 2014, I would say for 2012, 2013. So I would have mentioned that I was more ready, and the truth is, so we're talking about the impact on our marriage, and the truth is I felt alone. Emotionally, it was a hard time for me because I wanted children so badly, and I wanted to conceive so badly, and then then finding out that I had fibroids, I started to feel like, oh, so it was my fault. Not that, oh, let's just fix this and move on. I started to blame myself. And partially too, that came from external influences, I would say, because persons kind of automatically assume that if you're having a challenge with conceiving, then it's the woman's fault.
Yeah.
And just the just the words, how things are phrased can be very insensitive and very hurtful.
Yeah.
So I would hear, oh, you just need to do this, or you just need to do that, and then you'll conceive. Oh, drink this, or don't drink that, or take this, or don't
There's
take
always
that.
something to drink.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
And it was always directed at me and only me. And so I felt like, man, something must be wrong with me.
Well, to be fair, there it was directed to you, maybe for the persons who you'd have spoken to, because from my side I heard the occasional, just take some, just drink some Guinness, or take some pumpkin tea or something. There's always something being recommended to me as well, because I think that's just kind of how people are, where if you whoever shares the challenge, they share a solution. So
right?
That's kind of
you might be right. It's a matter of audience, who we were speaking to, and the fact that we were speaking to them separately most times.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the feeling of loneliness came from. The fact that I was talking to other persons about it, but I wasn't talking to you as my husband about what I was feeling and what I was going through.
And to me, I think that's something a lot of couples go through, because if there's a challenge there, and just even thinking back to women, sometimes when they're hoping to get pregnant, the checking of pregnancy, or the waiting for her period, like women, there are a lot of stories I hear, they go through that part alone.
Yes, and then for me, that was my experience as well. So I wasn't sharing with Jermaine what was happening for me internally. Instead, I would go in the bathroom and cry.
I would just wake up, I'm here sobbing. And when I hear the sobbing, I was like, okay, cool, period is here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would go to the restroom in the morning, and I would see that, my cycle has started, and I would break down, I would fall apart, but I would close the door. So it was just
so
me.
You think I wasn't hearing you, but
right.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't cry quietly.
But the truth is, I felt like I was burdening him. And then because I was also dealing with that feeling of it being my fault that we weren't having children, I didn't want to talk about it with him, to kind of compound it, not knowing at the time how much sharing it with him would have helped us both.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just one of those things that I think a lot of couples go through in this situation, where you, like, naturally we tend to blame ourselves first.
Yeah.
It's I think it's very unlikely that you're going to have a husband who thinks it's his wife's fault, or a wife who thinks it's her husband's fault.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of, process it by ourselves, say it's our fault. And then only when somebody either makes the first move, or it comes out in another way, then you're like, oh, well, you're feeling that, I'm feeling that, we're feeling this together.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of make things a little bit better. But
right, and support each other.
That kind of trying to go through it on our own lasted a while.
It did. It really did, because even before I move on, let us just say and clarify here that it's neither person's fault.
Yeah.
Like there's no blame to be had in these situations. It's not
that's
your fault.
That's like, I can't think of a situation where I can say, well, I didn't work out in, like, if it's a biology issue,
Mm-hmm.
If it's, for example, there was trauma or stress or anything like that, like those aren't things that you can control. So, I mean, I would just focus on the situation, meaning what
Right.
the challenge, whatever it
What
is
is
you're
happening
facing. I would
now?
definitely recommend, if you're in that situation, to talk to a specialist. We're certainly
Yes.
not those persons, but
Right.
whatever the challenge is identified to be, you just work on it together as husband and
Right.
wife. And it's not, if the challenge happens to be on one side, the person who doesn't have the challenge will need to support the one going through the challenge.
Absolutely.
So it's still, you're a team. You're husband and wife. You're one. That's what the word of God says.
Yes. And it did take us a while to learn that and to start operating in that way because after we started trying again, we came into 2014 now. We're still trying. It was during 2014, June 2014, that I would have gotten saved. Jermaine recommitted his life to Christ. And so now I started praying about this thing. It was no longer just hoping and wishing that it would happen, but this is me now in a relationship with God and saying, God, please.
Which brought its own wave of emotion and challenges as well, because once you start praying about something, you kind of start to have this timer in your head. Like, I've been praying for
Yes.
it for 3 months. I'm not seeing it. What's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. And the other danger that came with that for me, because again, we still weren't talking. I still wasn't sharing with Jermaine what I was feeling. I was still going this on my own. I would share with like girlfriends or something, but I wasn't sharing with my husband, which was just crazy. But in terms of the prayer, what was dangerous about it was that I started to blame God in my head now.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, all right, so I've quote unquote done my part in terms of getting the surgery done. So what's happening? Why am I not seeing a difference? And I started to say, well, God, you made me and you made me this way. So why didn't you make me able to conceive? And that was a dangerous path that I was
Yeah.
going down spiritually.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember just going through a phase as well. I don't remember the timeline of this one, of course, but there's a phase for me where, even though we were trying, I wasn't sure I was ready for children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I certainly felt like there was a disparity in terms of how much we both wanted it.
So I think it was around that same time that we would have been talking about the 2012 to about 2015-16 period. That was the disparity that we were having, which kind of is why I had mentioned to you how I was feeling, because I felt like we're in different places, because you were like, yeah, we can have kids, it's something that I want, but the intensity with which I wanted it was so much different from how you wanted it.
I just kind of took that intensity to be standard, because that's
Yeah.
Renee. When Renee wants something, she wants
I
it
want it.
always more than I do. So it's
I want
like,
it.
I mean, if Renee wants to go to the beach, it's like, oh, I get to go to the beach. Like, let's go. And I'm
It's like 0 or 100.
yeah. So
It tells me
there
that.
was never a kind of, I'm hopeful, but I understand things can maybe happen. Like, you never had that kind of perspective. So it made it, I guess it
became
maybe
stressful.
I don't know if stressful is the word I would use personally, but it was more like, okay, I was still working through what I wanted.
What you wanted for you.
Yeah.
At
So
the time.
it's
Okay.
just like, I mean, 2014, I would have been 30. So I'm like, well, do I want to be a father? Am I
Yeah.
ready? What kind of father would I be? Like, those were questions I was working through in my head. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like I was jumping for joy at the chance to be a father.
Right.
But of course, once I realized that there was a challenge in me becoming a father, it started to make those times that we were trying, me wishing that maybe as a little bit more active, or a little bit
Mhm.
more, purposeful. Like I wish we had more sex. Like, I was just kind of feeling like maybe if I tried more when we were trying,
Yeah.
then I wouldn't have gotten to the point where now I'm without and I really want, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So you found yourself in a situation where you were kind of blaming yourself or
Yeah.
feeling guilty as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just for a lot of things, but at one point, feeling like missed opportunities.
Yeah.
Looking back every time we argued, instead of having sex, as like, could that have been the chance that
That
we
we
had?
miss.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
kind of felt like you know we if we tried sooner, we wouldn't have the
Mm.
challenges that we had, and maybe would have been parents when we weren't ready, but would still be parents, and we
Right.
would have eventually gotten to the point that we became ready. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah. So those are just a few of the things that were going through our minds separately at the time when we had this disparity in how much we wanted children or who wanted children when. And the truth is that there were our motives may not have been completely pure or rather, let me not say may not have been. They were
still
not
figuring it out.
Yeah.
So we just didn't know.
Yeah, so I just knew that I had the desire for children, and I wanted to. I've always wanted to be a mother. So for me, that's what I was moving on, not knowing at the time how much I needed to work through on an individual level in terms of becoming ready.
Yeah.
And I think similarly for you, as you were working through why you did not feel excited about being a father, particularly at that time.
Yeah. So so the picture we're trying to paint here is that we went from a case where Renee really wanted kids. I was kind of on the fence.
Yeah.
Then we're actively trying for kids.
Mhm.
And then it's like it went from being on the fence to, this is something
We both really
but
want.
we can't have. And so now the dynamic when we started to actively try it together,
Yes.
I think that's where we really wanted to get to in this video.
Yes.
And it's just to really say some of the things that comes with that. So
I think about 2016, we were now on the same page and working actively
yeah,
together.
because we were ready to start a family. I think we were buying our first home that year.
Mhm.
I'd gotten a new job. Things were, I felt like it was like settle down here,
Yeah.
even though we had been married for 6 years before that. So it felt like I was finally, understanding who I was, what I wanted, kind of thing. So at the point that we are ready to do something is when we're concerned with the fact that we can't do it.
Right.
So before that point, I wasn't so concerned or was worried or noticing how long we were trying.
Mm-hmm. I was, though.
So until we were actually until I was in it, I was like, so.
Yeah. So we had two different perspectives of the journey. And that's why we wanted to discuss it and, share how it impacted us individually first, and then get into how it impacted us as a couple. So when we hit about mid 2016 and we're both in it together, and we're 100% in it, and we're trying, and we're going to the doctor's visits, and we're going through the testing, and we're going through the roller coaster ride of having a period every month, and the tears and crying together and praying together, and praying for healing, and being told by doctors that it will never happen for us naturally. And so we had to go to the fertility clinic, and another round of testing, and another round of hearing from the doctors,
like egg sharing or IVF,
right,
that stuff.
All of that is very taxing. It's very taxing emotionally on the persons involved. And
I mean, even before you get to the emotion, a lot of times the cost factor is so overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
Then you start to, so when we spoke about IVF, for example, I was like, okay, we can't afford that.
Yeah.
So again, for me, because I didn't see it as a possibility, I was like, okay, that one was crossed off the list for me because at the time we could not afford it. So
Right.
looking at the other options, looking at just what we needed to do, it did start to feel like, okay, I have no choice but to, you know, just keep trying. Like I started to say, okay, do I know how to have sex? Am I having sex in the right way?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like,
you start to question a lot of things as the journey continues, as the challenges persist. And so um it it was taxing financially, it was taxing on our time, because we had to spend time in doctors' offices, spend
it was
time,
taxing
and it
emotionally.
was definitely taxing emotionally because I mean the only benefit for us is that we were now sharing our emotions, how we were feeling with each other, and so we were in a better place to support each other. When I was having low moments, Jermaine was surely there for me, and vice versa. So I definitely no longer felt alone in it. I no longer closed the door to say, don't, I don't want to hear him. I don't want him to hear me crying, or, to know when we've tested and it's come back negative, kind of thing. Because even that, I used to hide the tests. I used to take the tests without letting him know. And then I would just be in a slump, in a funk, the whole day, and he'd be like, "What's wrong? Why are you? What's happening?" And eventually, I would say, "Well, I took a test this morning and it was negative." For us, that led to, "Don't take a test alone.
Yeah.
Let me know when you're gonna test." So he would say to me, Jermaine would say to me, "Let me know when you're gonna take a test, and I'll be there with you." Yeah, and that meant so much to me. I I don't think I realized how much it was weighing on me when I was doing it alone until I took the first test with you there, and you were there to console me. So since then, I have not taken a test alone, and it has been a very different experience. Still hurtful. It was still hurtful for a while, but it's just been very different knowing that I have his support 100%.
Yeah, because I mean, it's what I kind of thought is that it's something that impacts the both of us. Like you're not. It takes the two of us to create a child. It
Yeah.
takes two of us to be parents. So it is not. I was well aware of the fact that your emotional state will impact, and this is something I say to her all the time.
Mhm.
How you manage stress, how you deal with the fact that we haven't had kids yet, all of those things impact your ability for us to do the thing we're trying to do.
Yes.
So if you are all caught up in it, stressed out about it, worried about it, it's going to defeat the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. I've always tried to get her to just remain hopeful and
Yeah.
optimistic, because just trusting that God is in control.
Absolutely. And that was the biggest part of our journey, coming into a realization and an acceptance that God is sovereign, and that he does love us. So he's not doing this to torture us.
Yeah.
The plan that he has for us is greater than anything that we could have planned for ourselves. And as hard as it has been, I am grateful for all that we have gone through, because now I can look back and see that those times were times of preparation. Those times were times of refining for us, or personalities or expectations, even how we relate to each other, how we love each other, because one thing we haven't spoken about yet is how it impacts intimacy when you're trying to conceive.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
You mean apart from the fact that sex, while trying for a child, starts to feel like work, like you're actually
yes,
you're about to do um what you call it now? What's the best way to describe it? It didn't feel fun
Right.
anymore.
Right. It
Yeah.
wasn't fun. It wasn't fulfilling. It was a task that needed to be done.
Yeah.
And it felt like something you need to check off your checklist. Because what you're ovulating now, or it's time, you're in the window, so let's do it. So it was no longer about
Yeah.
us bonding. It was no longer about us.
And I mean, it caused so much stress on our bodies, and so the intimacy challenges that we had just from being husband and wife, just
Yeah.
normal challenges now became amplified because
Yes.
if you have an issue, you feel like you can't work it out because you're in the window. Let's just have sex now, we'll figure out the issue later.
Yeah.
So that kind of put a different tone to the intimacy because
Right.
it's not from a place that you're doing it just to be with each other. It's more like we're doing this to have a child. Like we're
Right.
doing a transaction. Let's just complete the transaction and we go on about our way.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a whole other layer to the impact that the whole experience had on us as
Yeah.
as a couple. So yeah, it was pretty serious to the point where, as we said, it was no longer fun or fulfilling. So when we realized what was happening, we had to now actively start trying to reverse what had
Yeah. So
been done.
we started to try and say, well, our intimacy can't be about just having a child. Our
Mhm.
intimacy has to be about our marriage, our union, our oneness. Let us conceive a child out of love.
That love, yes.
And not conceive because we were able to meet the window on time or
Mhm.
anything like that. So that took a long time. Long
Yes.
time to work
Yes,
out.
it did. And so it took a while for us to get there. And there are some things that are still like residual
Yeah.
from it that we have to be mindful of, and we have to keep watch so that those things don't creep in and become problematic in our intimacy even now.
Yeah.
So what we realize, we've heard this saying, right, that before you get married, the enemy is encouraging you to have sex.
Yeah.
And when you are married,
He's trying to
stop you from having sex.
Yeah.
which is true. And that's just a word to the unmarried and the married.
Yeah.
And the married folks who may be listening. For the married folks, be very, very watchful of your intimacy, of your time together, of your bonding as husband and wife, because that is powerful in the spirit. It is powerful in God's kingdom, and He made it that way for a reason.
Yeah.
So the intent is never for you to lose that intimacy with your spouse. And for the unmarried, understand that it is important for you to continue pursuing and protecting your purity as unto the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another topic that we're hoping to
cover
talk
soon.
about at some point, because
Yeah.
sexual purity is a real thing.
Yes.
And a lot of people think that it's just for couples who are unmarried, but that's not true, because you can be married and sexually impure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of, just to recap, in terms of the impact that this infertility journey had on our marriage, one, we were separated. We were living together. We were married. We were living life together, but we were operating separately in silos and emotionally distant from each other because of the guilt that we carried.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean it's natural, but we are having this video hoping that we can help somebody break that naturalness of trying to go through it separately.
Alone, right?
Yeah.
And the second point of impact that was very noticeable for us is that it impacted our intimacy how we interacted with each other. Things became mechanical.
If you are about to have sex with your partner and the only thought on your mind is, are we going to conceive?
Yeah.
You may want to take a step back and reevaluate.
Yeah.
Think back to when you just got married, how fun sex was, and just how much you looked forward to it. And don't let sex be for a transaction
Right.
where the baby is the end result. Let it be fun, something to enjoy, something that you enjoy as just a blessing that the Lord has given to you as
Right.
husband and wife.
Yes. And another point is just the importance of supporting each other. So the impact here is that it helped us to see the importance of supporting each other, of being vulnerable with each other, being open about how we're feeling, what we're going through,
Yeah.
and just being willing to share that so that we can be there for each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're one flesh for a reason, right? So you're not meant to go through anything alone, or Renee's favorite verse, Genesis 2:18. It's not, the Lord
It's
said
not
it
good
wasn't
for
good for
man
me
to
to
be
be alone,
alone.
right? So, I mean, and that, I think it goes both ways. If he
Mhm.
made woman first, it would not have been good for her to be alone either.
Right.
So we are meant to go through life together.
That's correct. That's correct. And ultimately, overall, it impacted us in terms of improving our spiritual life, or dependence on God, or
Yeah.
understanding and our appreciation of His sovereignty in the plan that He has for us as a couple.
It really brought the perspective of Romans 8:28 for me, because we believe that everything that we have been through, have gone through, is going through, is a part of God's plan for us.
Yeah.
The difference is how we experience the journey is dependent on our perspective,
right.
focus, or prayer life.
Mhm.
Right? So that's what we mean, for example, when we say wait well.
Yes.
Waiting well, you're going to be waiting anyway. You might as well wait from the right posture.
That's
So
right.
all of those things that go into walking your path in the right way is something that we've learned that is just extremely important. So
Yes.
yeah.
And so I'm glad that you mentioned the Wait Well hashtag.
Of course you are.
I didn't want us to forget it. That for us is one of the greatest impacts, and it kind of summarizes
Yeah.
what we have gone through, what our experience has been. This phrase "wait well" is what the Lord has said to us in the past few years, and it has empowered us to continue pursuing Him above all else.
Yeah, it serves as a guide. So when you find yourself being miserable or frustrated or angry, you hear wait well and you're like, okay, cool.
Because you know what it means.
Yeah.
Especially as a Christian, you know what it means when the Lord says to you, wait well.
Yeah.
When he says wait, I should say, and we're saying to you, wait well. We're sharing that part of our journey and what He has said to us with you, to be cognizant of the fact that He loves you and that He remains sovereign in your life.
Yeah.
And something that I posted on my Instagram page.
Follow us on Instagram.
The plugs. Something I posted on my Instagram page about infertility, just in lieu of this week as well. I said in it that even without pregnancy or not, God remains sovereign. He is enough. He is enough. And I'll just do a quick share of an experience in that. For me, one of the hardest questions to answer in this whole journey was when the Lord said to me, what if I don't allow you to conceive? I had to process that, because innately you know what you're supposed to say, but honestly I couldn't answer that from a place. I I couldn't answer that in the way that I knew I should. I couldn't the first time that I heard it, I couldn't say, yes, Lord, I'd worship you anyway. I couldn't, not from an honest place. And over time, the Lord has so graciously worked me through it, processed me through it to the place where I am today, where I'm able to say, Lord, even if you don't, I still worship you. I still love you. You are still enough.
Yeah, I think that's a place, if more persons were honest with themselves, that we all kind of go through, because that place that you're describing comes in when you're willing to say the thing that comes in when you're willing to say the thing that I'm waiting and hoping for, even though I want it so much, even though it's been a long time, it's not as important as you, God. So that's a
Right.
very hard thing to say.
It is.
A very
It
hard
is.
thing to, that's a hard place to get to. So I don't think it's an automatic thing.
No.
Maybe you, Renee, would have, the Lord might have highlighted that for your kind of benefit. And I think
Right.
it's just something a lot of people go through. I think I would have gone through something similar where I had to say, well, I want to be a father. If I don't get to be a father, would I still serve the Lord in the right
Yeah.
way? Because we know situations where people have turned away from the Lord because they're not able to wait, or they're not happy with the fact that they feel like the Lord is withholding from them. So
Yeah.
that's another conversation, though, but like it's just something that we all have to contend with. So,
Right.
yeah.
So thank you for that. And I think with that, we are
Yeah.
wrapping
So
up.
yeah, so we want to hear from you. We love when persons share their stories with us in the comments below. So share with us your journey, and share this video with someone who is waiting. Encourage them to wait well. Pray for others who you see are in need, and pray more than anything else for the Lord's will to be done, not for your own
Yes.
desire to
Yes.
come to pass.
Yes. So again, we thank you for joining us. We absolutely love hearing from you guys. And if there's anything else that you're interested in hearing from us, please do let us know, because we are more than willing to share with you. And that's it for us today. We'll
Yep.
see you in the next one.